to objectively figure out what actually happened. But what is most likely is that each side will interpret it as, an Israeli strike on the one hand and the Islamic Jihad on the other. But it points out the larger issue, Anderson, which is why so many people in the United States, and my understanding is the Biden administration have been urging Israel to exercise caution, to be strategic about where it hits, is that this is what happens in war. This is the fog of war, and the danger here, and this is after all why Hamas planned these terror attacks, was to provoke Israeli action, which then has the effect of producing these kind of images, and they can then exploit them, and Arab countries will feel more reticent to deal with Israel, more reticent to normalize relations. So, it's important to just remember, what was Hamas's goal here? Hamas's goal was to get the Israelis dragged into Gaza. And that's why it seems to me just exercising as many smarts, as much strategy about this becomes very important. This particular event, it's impossible to know, but the world of social media, I've already seen it. It's going viral in two completely different directions.
I mean, having covered this region for a while over the decades, I feel like we have all been here before. We've seen this cycle play out time and time again, and it's one of the impossible things about this situation is people see things two completely different ways or multiple completely different ways. Does it? I was just talking to General David Petraeus, and he was expressing the hope that there is some sort of a plan for whatever the ground operation may be. That
true wisdom, if ever spoken, he said, good wisdom that makes sense, common sense, yeah. Others might try to promote the lynch mob mentality, cast and lay blame on others for this or for that, without knowing the facts and just jumping to conclusions real fast to get others in a spiral of hate and action, where they will do the things that they should not be doing because they're not thinking, not using their smarts, going off on a tangent, emotionally driven.
Who is going to rule Gaza? Is it going to be the Israelis? Is it going to be some international force? Because remember, whoever tries to rule Gaza is going to face an insurgency launched by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. They're not going to let somebody else do it. So are the Saudis really going to go in and try to rule over Gaza and kill Arabs, Palestinians in the process? I don't think so. Are Europeans going to be willing to do it? I don't think so. This is why it is such a potential quagmire, because the Israeli army is extraordinarily strong and powerful and disciplined. They will probably be able to do a lot to, remember they used to say in Iraq, to clear, but then you have to hold. Who is going to hold?
A quagmire and inconsistency. A quagmire of inconsistency and confusion. Well, it just goes into biting its own tail. Goes into repeating it well. Goes into whoa, oh, 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 oh. Not only a quagmire, but there is a word I'm thinking of. I had it in the beginning, but it kind of escaped me. Maybe I'll get it back. Yeah, what he was saying, what he was talking about, exactly. But not just a quagmire. It speaks of something else too. What it is
a long war.
human feeling
All I think is about people
without
that get murdered,
the appropriate
the masquerade
reasoning.
is doing to our people. And
For emotions must be checked
friends that they
and
are.
controlled by reason
So if they're
and right thought and fairness.
they are okay,
Always
armed,
the
or
season.
they need hospital or something
That's what
like
you
that,
need
we always try
to come into your
raise about them.
own
We
home.
want to bring them back
For we all
safe
are evolving
to their
and need to continue that self
Mr.
quest
Hart, you were at the Supernova
of becoming
Festival.
our
And
very
can you
best
talk a little bit about
and
what you two went through?
becoming
Because I
people
understand
who
you
search for
obviously
truth,
escaped, but
not just relative truth in this world, but ultimate truth as well. To become true philosophers who always seek the truth and know that you're taking in truth as much as you can. You allude to the fact that you won't just take in everything that shines at you. You'll question authority, you'll do more. You'll question authority, you'll do more. To always get at truth when you make your decisions. Truth in making decisions. Truth before you just take what someone else says.
Liron, you lost friends at that festival.
Yes. Some friends that we are friends from the army. I lost them in this festival. They also like the trance music and like to the festivals in Israel, and I lost them. I didn't realize it in the first hours, but when I get home after all this terrible day, I understand that I have a lot of friends that will never come back from this party.
And I understand, Liron, you made the decision to report for reserve duty the very next morning.
We want to bring our friends that in Gaza are safe, and to show Hamas and to show all the terrorist organization in the other country that near us that we are here in Israel and we are here to stay and we don't afraid from nobody and we here to save our country and protect it from all the terrorist organization in the world.
Well, Zohar and Liron, thank you so much for your time. I wish you the best.
Thank you to invite us.
Well, coming up next, the protests that we have seen over the last several hours in Lebanon, plus Israel says it exchanged fire once again with Hezbollah. Ben Wiedemann is in southern Lebanon, has more on the fears of a possible second front opening next.
When you've tried everything.
I was getting chemical pills, bleaching cream.
This is melasma. I'm trying to get rid of it. I've tried everything.
Introducing Muesli Face RX, prescription skincare delivered straight to your door. The spot cream is 10 times more potent than over-the-counter and prescription alternatives, so you'll finally see a difference.
My skin looks amazing.
It's amazing.
I'm a loyal customer forever.
See for yourself at muesli.com/TV.
If you're like I was, you're tired of worn-out plastic mats under your office chair. They dent and crack, and they're uncomfortable to roll on. I found a premium alternative, a glass chair mat by Vitraza. I liked it so much, I bought the company. I'm George Pardo, president of Vitraza. Our glass chair mats are made of super strong glass and protected with a nanotech coating, so you'll always get a smooth, easy glide. And they're beautiful. Tired of replacing plastic? I promise this is the last chair mat you'll need. And we give you a lifetime warranty. Comfort, style, durability. A Vitraza glass chair mat will completely transform your workspace. Home office or office. We stock 18 popular sizes, and we ship free to anywhere in the lower 48. Get the look you deserve. I invite you to shop online at Vitraza.com. Use promo code TV and save 10% on any glass chair mat at Vitraza.com.
48% of Americans don't get enough magnesium, which is vital for bone, nerve, and muscle health. I I recommend Qunol's extra strength high absorption magnesium. It gives you 100% of the daily value of magnesium. Qunol, the brand I trust.
Switch to Shopify so you can build it better, scale it faster, and sell more. Much more. Take your business to the next stage when you switch to Shopify.
Sidney Crosby just continues to produce because he has a great hockey mind. Get ball, roll the wrist, upstairs. Detroit's dangerous team, and they're looking to make that next step. He scored! Fournier.
Tomorrow at 7 on TNT.
Discover crisp morning air. Flavors of the Spice Trail. Peaceful places.
An international force in the Gaza Strip, and then the Palestinian Authority, some kind of solution. But the solution that we've been living with, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah, and we'll go back there in a minute, Hezbollah in Lebanon, is no solution. It's feeding the devil. And this devil wakes up one morning on the 7th of October and slaughters your citizens. This is something that none of us can live, and none of us includes all of Western civilization.
Rami Igra, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Coming up next, the family of a Canadian-Israeli mother murdered in her kibbutz home by Hamas in front of her children, who were then kidnapped to be used for propaganda. One of them shot, survived. We'll talk to the family ahead.
Every day, more dog people and more vets are deciding it's time for a fresh approach to pet food. They're quitting the kibble and kicking the cans and feeding their dogs dog food that's actually, well, food. Developed with vets, made from real meat and veggies, portioned for your dog, and delivered right to your door. It's smarter, healthier pet food. Get 50% off your first box at thefarmersdog.com/realfood.
Pretzel fanatics are freaking out. Give your taste buds a twist. We at Pretzels.com freshly bake over 45 varieties of chef-crafted gourmet pretzels in the heart of Pennsylvania. Get a new twist for someone you love or yourself at Pretzels.com.
This couple spent 10 more minutes in bed thanks to Roman. With Roman, you can take care of erectile dysfunction conveniently and discreetly. Because sometimes everything else can wait. Get started at ro.co/Roman.
A wide leaf filter? It's well designed, efficient. I appreciate that.
Leaf Filter's technology keeps debris out of your gutters for good. Guaranteed.
What more could you ask for?
Call 833-LEAF-FILTER today or visit leaffilter.com.
This is how Tosin lost 33 pounds on Noom Weight.
I'm Tosin.
Noom gave her a psychological approach to weight loss.
Noom has taught me how you think about food has such a huge impact on your relationship with it.
Visit Noom.com and start your trial today. Discover the Emma Hybrid Comfort, designed with 7-zone sleep technology, so you wake up feeling refreshed and fully recharged, ready to face the day with a smile. Order Emma Hybrid Comfort to put your sleep issues to bed. Free delivery.
Outspoken in his support for Israel, in the fact that he has said that Israel has the right to self-defense, the right to strike back at Hamas. But in the environment right now, with both sides having a different narrative, it is perceptions on the ground that are going to take over. And the perceptions inside Gaza tonight will be that this was an Israeli missile, irrespective of the fact that the IDF is scouring its databases, looking for evidence and information to support the details that they're already laying out, that this was an errant rocket fired by Islamic Jihad. It's the perceptions that are going to make it so difficult for President Biden to make any kind of broad diplomatic headway in the region at the moment, and really stoking tensions across the region, again because of those perceptions. It is really a time that has put this region on edge, Laura.
Nick Robertson, thank you so much. Here with me now, CNN Jerusalem correspondent Hadass Gold. Also here, Chief National Security Correspondent Alexander Marquardt. what we're seeing unfold really in real time, we don't have information as to who is responsible. There's competing statements that are being made. President Biden is en route. We don't have all the answers. He won't touch down likely with all the answers. When you look at the intelligence that now is looking to figure out whether Israel's explanation of this errant rocket is right, is truthful, what are you learning?
Well, so much of the intelligence that comes out of Gaza and is about Hamas comes from the Israelis to the Americans. But of course, the Americans have their own collection abilities as well. When we first learned about this strike, Hamas was very quick, as you might expect, to blame this on Israel. It took a beat for Israel to then turn around and say, in fact, this was an errant rocket from Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and we are waiting. We have been waiting for several hours now for them to present this evidence. What we do know is that Israeli intelligence has sent some of what they have to bolster their case to American counterparts, specifically signals intelligence, which means intercepts. It can also include drone footage. Those are two of the things that the Israelis have actually mentioned. And so this is something that the U.S.'s intelligence is looking at right now, but they have not made any kind of decisive assessment as to whether what Israel is saying about this Palestinian rocket is true.
So, Hadass, as Alex mentioned, it's been hours. There's a lot at stake. One would think you'd want to get the information out there right away, say this was not us, we did not do this, there's hundreds of people who are dead. Why is there a delay, you think?
Well, because I think they want to have a complete lock on the information, and we do expect the Israelis to go public with this information potentially in the next few hours because they have to. Morally, they have to, but also on the international stage, they have to. But even if this information comes out and the Americans are convinced, President Biden is convinced, and even says, I believe this was an errant rocket that caused this, the damage is already done. Look at just the media coverage over the last few hours. Look at what's happening on the streets in these cities all around the world. Israelis are being warned to immediately leave places like Turkey. Like at this moment, if you're vacationing in Turkey, get on a plane, get out now. So even if it turns out that the Israelis are correct, that President Biden agrees with their assessment, this was an errant rocket, the damage is done. We've seen the summit that has been canceled. This was to help with this humanitarian situation. President Biden's trip is being changed dramatically. The damage for the Israelis on the international stage is already completely done.
So what is the intelligence you're looking for then? In terms of, not you personally, Alex, but of course what the president will look for to figure out and make these assessments, because if the damage is done and perception is king, what happens?
Well, I completely agree, first of all, with Hadass that the horse is bolted. There is certainly a sense on the Arab street that the Israelis are responsible for this, and there's probably no turning that back. What the Americans are going to be looking at is what the Israelis are certainly going to be offering up. So what we're hearing from the Israelis, and again, we haven't seen this yet, is that they're going to offer before and after drone videos and images. They're going to be offering intercepts that they claim show Palestinians talking about how this was a Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
But wait, why would the before and after drone videos be sufficient as opposed to, is there not a real time as it's happening? What's the discrepancy?
So the U.S. intelligence community isn't going to tell us exactly what they have right now, but what the Israelis are saying is that the before and afters are going to show that the impact on the hospital is not what you would expect from an Israeli rocket. What we've heard earlier tonight from the IDF is that if this were an Israeli rocket dropped from one of their planes, you'd see this huge crater and a lot more damage. And what they're saying that we're going to see in a couple hours' time is not that. But the U.S. is treading extremely carefully here because they want to make sure that they have their own assessment with their own assets, of course, taking into consideration what the Israelis have. But no doubt, it has completely changed the game. It has cut short President Biden's trip. And we've seen these massive protests, which, in addition to what you're talking about in Turkey, the State Department tonight said that Americans should not travel to Lebanon. We saw huge protests outside the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. They've also said that some American diplomatic families and non-essential staffers can go home. So the temperature is rising significantly, and we're watching very closely to see if, because of this event that left hundreds of Palestinians dead, whether that will cause other groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon to get involved.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say not Americans can travel or shouldn't go, not just Israelis. Is the thought that President Biden being in this area Is there some blame attribution to the United States as well and compromising safety abroad?
Well, I mean, it's a huge show of support for the Israelis that President Biden is showing up. It's the first time an American president has landed on Israeli soil during an active conflict or war that Israel is engaging in. So just his presence alone shows a huge amount of support. And the fact that he is still choosing to land in Israel despite some of the questions around what happened and despite the summit being canceled, still showing a huge amount of support. And keep in mind, the region is already boiling. Israel hasn't even started its ground incursion yet. We do expect that to happen. Region is already boiling. Just imagine what happens when there's Israeli boots on the ground.
And there is no, of course, there is no Israeli embassy in Lebanon. The two countries are still officially at war. So what the Lebanese are doing, these protesters that we saw tonight, they're directing their anger at the United States. And that's what we're going to see more and more, because the U.S., by its own admission, what we've heard is that they are showing their ironclad support for Israel. So a lot of the blame, again, from the Arab street, to use that term, is going to be directed at the United States. We heard from the Pentagon today saying that they will continue supplying Israel with everything that they need. So it's certainly going to be seen as an accomplice to Israel and what Israel is planning next.
Stick around, both of you. I need to really lean on your expertise and what you know about this area. I want to go now, though, to CNN's Nada Bashir. She is live in Amman, Jordan. Nada, we are working through all this domestically and trying to figure out what's happening here. This tragedy has had both political and social consequences. There's a very high-stakes summit that was supposed to happen. It's now been canceled. There are protests. Biden is almost now arriving in Israel. Bring us up to speed on what you're seeing.
Well, look, there is certainly high stakes over here, and as you mentioned there, we have seen protests. This isn't the first time. We have seen protests here in Jordan on an almost daily basis since the outset of this war. In fact, we have seen protests taking place across the Middle East, across the globe. And what we have seen last night is real outpouring of both outrage and condemnation across multiple Arab nations, people taking to the streets in their hundreds, both in solidarity with the Palestinian people, but also, of course, in opposition to Israel's continued and relentless bombardment of the Gaza Strip. Now, here in Amman, we saw huge crowds turning up, heading towards the Israeli embassy last night. Some protesters even attempting to storm the Israeli embassy at one point. And you have to understand that there is a huge focus on the Palestinian issue here in Jordan. Of course, a huge portion of the population are Palestinian refugees or descendants of Palestinian refugees. And then I cannot overstate how significant, how prevalent the Palestinian cause is in the general shared psyche of the Arab world. This is a huge issue for the Arab population, but of course it remains to be seen how that translates into action by Arab leaders. And we've seen protests across other countries as well. Lebanon, as Alex mentioned, in Tunisia, in Baghdad, we have seen people taken to the streets. And of course, in the occupied West Bank in Ramallah, we saw significant protests and even some clashes last night. And of course, what we have seen here in Jordan is this is translating into having an impact on the political and diplomatic front. That summit that was set to be held tomorrow between King Abdullah of Jordan, President Sisi of Egypt, Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority president, and of course US President Joe Biden. That summit has now been cancelled. We heard from the Jordanian Foreign Minister speaking yesterday. He says the singular focus for Jordan for hosting this summit was to bring an end to the war.
Emotions being fired up to the point of craziness. Emotions being fired up to the point of craziness. People thinking one thing, the truth being another. People being fired up each other. People getting fired up with craziness, thinking one thing when it's another, yes. People being fired up with craziness in the Middle East, largely Arab nations. Condemnation, you know, the truth may be one thing and the facts another. Yeah, in all likelihood it was a stray missile from Lebanese territory, Hezbollah. Or Hamas one, yeah. And that's likely because Israel found out. Now no one's going to believe them because they already made up their minds and went to emotional heights of craziness. Condemnness, condemning, yeah. Well, that's what you got. The lynch mob mentality never does justice for anyone or anybody. Talks canceled. Talks of peace and keeping yourself being smart with holding off judgment and everything. Yeah, emotions are too juggled up, too crazy. You gotta tone it down, boys and girls. Tone it down. Learn what the real facts are before you hold a gathering and get so far as to become angry, thinking, you know, you're gonna have to change your mind if you're all wrong, but then you won't want to. Human condition, showing the worst things about humans when they don't have the facts together and they make split judgments. Well, you know, that's some groups trying to make it happen like that. They had it planned all along to make people think one way and get them to act another in accord with their guidelines.
When you have auto glass damage, trust SafeLight. My customer really relies on his car's advanced safety system.